Hey guys, Waterfowler41 here, and in today's video we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of LED pods. So I decided it was finally time to upgrade the LED pods that are sitting on my Z-Roads hood hinge brackets. So I'm going to be replacing my OZ USA LED pods with a different type of LED that I just picked up. So before I completely upgrade, I figure let's go ahead and dive into the specifics on the OZ lights, how they perform, what my thoughts on these guys, and then we'll take a look at the other lights that are sitting right over here, and we'll then kind of do some light output tests. So I got the light meter, it's ready to go down there. We're going to open up the garage and fire up the lights, take a look at their output, their spread, and just kind of overall view of the lights. So first lights we're looking at, like I said, these are my OZ USA lights. So I've had these on the truck since I installed those Z-Roads hood hinge brackets, and these are great LED pods. I've ran these on my GMC Sierra back in the day, and they've been very well on my Ram Rebel. So a couple specifics on these guys and kind of why I went with these lights when I first started looking at LED pods. First, cost. So these are what I would call your bargain light pods. So right now these are on Amazon for I think around $70. So you could prime them 2 days, $70. Not a bad option for some pretty quality lights. So what we're looking at here is a 3x3 light. So it's your typical pod setup. But the advantage of these lights over most of the other ones on the market is these also have an integral DRL circuit. So if you look down in the center of this light, and you can go back in my other videos when I install these, you can see these illuminated. But down in the center here, there's a fifth LED, and that basically lights up this cross inside the LED housing and gives it a cool DRL function. Now what you're going to notice right away on these is they're also yellow. So a couple videos back, I actually wrapped these with Laminex fog light overlay film, mostly because I was curious as to how easy they go on, that film goes on light bars, but also I wanted to match my fog lights on the bottom of my Rebel. So the color I use on these LED pods is the same exact color I use on the fog lights, and it actually looked pretty cool. So back to the lights. Let's kind of do a rundown of the specs on these guys, and again, just kind of the highlights of why I like these in the beginning when I was starting to run those ditch lights. First off, these are 20 watts. So you're looking at roughly 5 watts per LED, probably a little bit less because I think that wattage on OZ's USA website also includes that center LED. So ultimately these bad boys are running 20 watts, so 5 watts per LED, and they're putting out about 1,600 raw lumens. So what does that mean? If you watch my last video, you know I like to speak in efficiencies on this stuff. So lumen per watt is the efficiency of how well lights turn power into light out. So the lumen per watt efficiency on these guys is 80 lumens per watt. So keep that in the back of your mind. So as far as connection, it's pretty simple. These mount just like any other LED brackets do. So they come with their own little integral brackets, and these just drop down on whatever mounting surface that you're putting them on. So if you're putting them on like a piece of unistrut, or if you're putting them on hood hinge brackets like in my case, they mount right to it. So there's no drilling or anything like that required to get these guys on there. They also come with I think a 11-inch whip with a plug on there. It's a nice waterproof plug. Like I said, this requires 3, so this is the Deutsch style plug with 3 inputs or 3 wires going into it. So it's shaped like a triangle. These pop in there nicely. I've never had an issue with these guys as far as water getting in there, so these have worked out real well. So the other thing on these guys is you get a 1-year warranty with these bad boys, and then their IP67 rating. So in the Midwest, we get a lot of freezing rain, and I've been through a lot of freezing rainstorms with these guys. I never touch the housing. I just want to see how well they handle it. A lot of times you get water that'll drip down on top of the fixture, and then it'll freeze and pop those seals. Never had an issue with these guys. So 20 watts, 5 watts per LED, 80 lumens per watt. So let's take a look at what I'm upgrading to. So let's get these guys out of the way and take a look at these guys. So I'm excited about these. These are Diode Dynamics brand new SS3 Max LED pods. So the SS3s have been out for a little while with Diode Dynamics. They have the Sport version as well as the Pro. So you up the wattage every time you go from one level to the next. And then they just released these about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And these are the SS3 Maxes. So this is the highest wattage LED pod they have right now. So let's run down the specifics on these bad boys. First off, cost. These guys are not cheap. So they're running a roughly $500. But I think with the light outputs and everything else you're getting out of these things, And if you're in the market for a high quality light, it's certainly something that will compete with the Baja Designs and Rigid Industries of the world. So like I said, $500 out the door with these guys. These are using 420 watt Osram LEDs, but I think they're underdriven because on their website for the specs on these units, these lights are actually 38.6 watts per pod. So what does that mean? That means they're running at roughly 9.6 watts per LED. So basically LEDs have two parts. One, there's a driver, and sometimes it's integral with the LED, sometimes it's built into the back of the housing. In this case, I bet you the driver is basically right in here. And that driver is underdriving LEDs that could basically put out 20 watts or accept 20 watts worth of power into them. However, these are running at 9.6 watts per LED. I do not have the DRL function anymore, but what I sacrifice with that cool function, I'm making up tenfold in light output. So let's talk about light output on these guys, and this is where you're gonna get blown away. So remember, these guys are 1,600 lumens, raw lumens, so not really measurable outside of a lab. Raw lumens on these guys, 7,920 lumens. These guys are almost, if not brighter than my 20-inch light bar in the front of the truck. What else about these? So let's talk efficiency. So we have 7,920 lumens. What does that mean? So you take that 7,920 lumens, divide it by the 38.6, and the efficiency in these guys is 205 lumens per watt. So for every watt you're putting in, you're getting 205 lumens out. Whereas over here, every watt you're putting in, you're getting 80 watts out. Or every watt you put in, you get 80 lumens out. These are gonna be insanely bright. So why did I go with these? I figured it was time to finally pull the trigger on a high quality light that could potentially outlast my truck. And why do I say that? These guys have an 8-year warranty. So I don't think I've ever kept a truck longer than 5 years. So these things are probably gonna outlive this truck, my next truck, and possibly the one after that. So let's go ahead and get my test apparatus set up, because what I want to do now is get these guys plugged into my trigger harness up front and take a look at the light output. So we're going to look at the total light output, but we're also going to look at the spread and how well the bargain LED pods compare to the baller LED pods. So let's get everything wired up. One thing I will say on the Diode Dynamic lights, this is the first time I've ever had a light where there is no whip on the back. So every light I bought to date has always had this 10, 11-inch whip. On the Diode Dynamic ones, the plug actually goes into the back of the LED. So you got this Deutsch connector, it just clips in there, and then you have this wire harness that hangs off the back of it. So let's go ahead and get everything hooked up on the front of the truck. Similar to my light bar test last time, I went ahead and threw some quick connects on a single pods harness. So basically what I want to do is plug in the first one, so the OZ USA ones. I'll plug these guys in, and then we're gonna take a look at the light output from that guy. We're gonna put the light meter at the end of my driveway and figure out what the max light output is in foot candles. And then we'll unplug everything from there and then use the same output from the trigger to drive these guys and see what these look like. And I'll take a look at the light pattern and everything. So let me go ahead and get everything set up. Okay, a little dark, but this is my test apparatus for the LED pod. So I have my step stool here, which basically represents the lights slightly above the ground. And just like with the light bar, I'm going to angle these. I'm going to try to get the hot spot from the light directly on the light meter, and the light meter is right there. So I have that. I stole a signal from my second channel on my trigger, so the trigger's got all these whips coming out of it. So I grabbed the second channel. So second channel is here, plugs into my test wire here, and the test wire then drives one LED pod. So we're going to start with the OZ USA pods. So one thing I will caveat on this, like I mentioned in the beginning, I did add Laminex overlays on top of this, so I don't know if these hindered the light output at all, but honestly I don't think they really did that much. I didn't notice a difference when I installed them, so I think we're going to be good. So what I'm going to do here now is shut off my wife's Christmas lights. We're going to set that guy on max light output, so we're going to measure it in foot candles just because that's what I talk in. I know foot candles, I have a basis for comparison. So foot candles is, if you're in a garage, your foot candles from a light standing right underneath is probably 50, 60 foot candles. It's like an office space. So we're going to hit that light bar or that light meter with the hot spot from this guy, and then we're also going to take a look at the spread. So I got an asphalt driveway, which is perfect for looking at how these work. But one thing I will also say is this is a spotlight, as are the SS3 Maxes. Those are driving lights, which are Diode Dynamics version of the spotlight. It's not as drastic, so it does have some spread to it, but these will be a relatively narrow light beam. It's just how narrow and how usable that light is within that beam. So let's get everything fired up. So let me get the truck turned on. Let me go get the light meter set up and then shut off the Christmas lights, and then we can take a look at the light output here. All right, so I have my truck fired up. I have my trigger app ready to go. So like I said, I have everything. That wire for this LED test pod is plugged into ditch lights. So let's go ahead and turn that on. And there we go. It is turned on and hit my neighbor's house. So let's hit the light meter. So the light meter is roughly 2.5 feet above the ground. So you can see it's a pretty heavy spot. There's not much wash with it, but it does have a pretty good range. So there's a cornfield across the street, and I'm basically able to light up that cornfield. So for a 20 watt LED, not a bad spread on it, not a bad output. So let's keep hitting that guy a little bit more with the hotspot and see where we ended up. Let's turn that off. Let's go take a look at it. We check this guy out. What is that? Roughly 4.3 foot candles. So pretty dim compared to other lights I've seen in the past. So let's keep that in the back of our mind. So this is 4.3 foot candles was the brightest it would hit, and that's roughly 30 feet from my truck. And that's all the lights off, and with the exception of our chandelier. So let me go ahead and get the Diode Dynamics one hooked up, and then we could fire that one up and see where that lands us as far as foot candles and the spread. Alright, so this is the moment I've been pretty excited and waiting for. So what I did is I just left the light meter at the 4.3 foot candles, which we got with the OZ one. Now we're going to fire up the SS3 Max. So I have that one wired in here. So everything's wired into my test harness, plugged in a trigger. The trigger's ready to go. So let's go ahead and hit that guy. Holy cow. That is bright. And look at the spread. So it's got a little bit wider of a spread. So long term. Wow, that covered. Holy cow. That is bright. Let's hit our light meter and see what that comes up. Holy cow. Look at that. That's a good spread for a driving light. Man, look at the distance on that bad boy. We'll have to take it out down the street and see how far. Actually, let's see how far this cable could go. All right. So I was generally curious how far we could get this light bar to go, or this light pod to go. So let's see, that's my sidewalk or front porch. Holy cow, it's really lighting up everything down there. Look at it, I'm even getting reflection way down there. Awesome. Damn. Cool. Well, let's hit this guy one more time and see what the overall light output was of this guy compared to the 4.3 we were getting out of the OZ USA. So let's shut everything down and go take a look. Okay, so remember the OZ lights were 4.3, and this guy is, let's see, 49.1 foot candles. Holy cow. So from my little test bench, which was right on that little step stool, to this light meter, we're looking at 49.1 light meters, 0.1 foot candles. So definitely a huge increase in light output. And you saw the coverage, it was kind of that oblong coverage up close, so farther out it really does spread a nice light beam out there in front of the truck. I'm absolutely ecstatic, and I'm really excited to get these guys plugged in and hooked up on a truck. So let's go ahead and close up everything, get the wires ready to go, and throw those SS3 Maxes on here and take a look at what they look like when we drive down the road. All right, so we have the lights installed on the pod, so you can kind of see them right there. They're a little dark right now, and I'm basically facing this back farm road here, just so we can kind of see what sort of throw these lights have. So right now this is just using my OEM headlights and no fog lights. So if I were to turn on the fog lights right now, you could see you got a little bit more coverage just because of the nature of the fog lights, but with those off, that's the headlights. So what I'm going to do here, turn off the headlights. Let me fire up the trigger app here, and now I'm going to turn on those ditch lights. Boom. So a little dusty over here, but what you can see is basically these things are providing as much, if not more, light output than my headlights were doing. So let me go ahead and turn my headlights on. So the headlights are just washing up right in front of the truck. But other than that, the throw of the SS3 Maxes is incredible. So right now I have them kind of aimed down the road, and I purposely did that because I wanted to have some sort of comparison here, and I wanted to show you what that throw looks like outside of, or sitting in the driver's seat of the truck. When I finalize the position of these bad boys, ultimately I'll have them pointing off to the side there. That way they could wash the ditches. But man, the light output from these guys is insane. So let's go ahead. That is the with headlights on and the SS3 lights on as well. Let's turn off those pods. So the pods are off now. So we're turning on the pods. I'll turn on my front light bar, and then I'll turn on my fog lights. So you can see with that combination, so my headlights, my fog lights, and both light bars, I've got a ton of light coverage, and it's exactly what I need. Now the comical part is, let's say I want to put my brights on. You can't even tell because these lights are outperforming the brights. So honestly, with this sort of light setup, I don't even use my brights anymore. I really just use the light bars. So again, I was using the light bar app to turn everything on. So a cool thing about this app is if I want to turn that off and I want to turn it on strobe mode, so let's do that and turn them on. The controller tells the lights to turn on and off pretty quickly to act them as a strobe. So if I turn that strobe mode off, and we're back to constant mode. So anyway, just wanted to show you just how good the light spread and light throw on these SS3 Maxes actually were. I wanted to show you what 205 watts lumens per watt actually looks like when it's coming out of the pod. This is an absolutely insanely bright LED, and honestly this is going to be my go-to LED pod from here on out, just based on how well these things light up. So again, one last one. Let's turn off the lights, and there you go. That's just the LED pods. That is a ton of light. That is super drivable light. And again, these are the driving lights of the SS3 series. So they have driving, they have fog, and they have flood, I believe, as well. But again, these are the driving ones. Oh, they have spot too. So the spot's going to give you a hot spot way down the road. It's going to have a really narrow throw, whereas these is kind of a hybrid between a spot and a flood, in that it has a long throw, but it's also a little bit wider of a field of view. So anyway, just wanted to show you what these lights look like, and the light output when they are mounted as ditch lights. But with that said, turn on light here. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you learned a little bit of something about the SS3 Max lights. Definitely check them out. I'll leave a link to them in the description below. But with that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care.